Morning. As everybody's joining up here, let's get the waterfall in the chat going. Let's see where everybody's coming in from. Post it up in the chat. Where are you coming in from today? I always want to see who's furthest away. We were just talking here. We've got East Coast, West Coast covered. We've got Boston, Virginia, Provence.
Honolulu.
Wow, Honolulu. All right. We've got some, my sailboat on Lake Ontario. Well done. I'm assuming Starlink's playing a role in that connection. And we got some Idaho's smoky Idaho. And I apologize. That might be the smoke from my neighborhood. I'm in British Columbia. We're in state of emergency right now as the province is aflame. Waiting to be tariffed for our smoke, and we'll see how that goes. All right. Ontario, good stuff. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Let's get this show on the road, and let me just get my screen set up, and I'm spotlighted, and we're laughing. All right. Welcome everybody. Let's dive in here. Today we're going to talk about a question that when you get to midlife, I think it becomes a little bit harder to ignore. And that is, what is it that you want to do? And what do you want the next 20 to 30 years, 10 years, whatever that is of your life to look like? Retirement may have happened, retirement may be closer. Or if you're like me, maybe you have no intention of retiring, but there are projects, there are adventures you've been postponing for a very long time. So today, let's adjust my camera here. Our guest knows a lot about building those ambitions into a full life. He's a best-selling author of Roar, Into That Second Half of Your Life Before It's Too Late, and the founder of Roar Forward. And before that, he spent 2 decades as the president and publishing director of Hearst Magazine, which I believe is one of the biggest magazine publishers on the planet. He's traveled to 126 countries, runs marathons. He's run marathons on 7 continents. He's a pilot, a photographer, and a bit of a renaissance man here, I would say. So, Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Derek. I'm exhausted already just hearing that.
Was I correct when I said Hearst is Hearst the biggest magazine publisher?
Yeah, we probably globally, we in the US, we have 25 titles.
Yeah.
Many people I'm sure are familiar. Actually, we're getting a lot of headlines this week with our cover story of Brad Pitt on Esquire, who's 62 years old and is really revealed a lot of his life. But my team and I were launched Oprah's magazine, and we launched HGTV and Food Network, and we have mass magazines like Good Housekeeping and niche magazines like Town and Country. And we're a global company, and actually Hearst, we have a lot of television stations, including the Albuquerque station, newspapers, local TV. So in some of the markets that I saw flash by, we have a presence there with our
Yeah.
local media and a lot more. So yeah, we're a big media company. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into this then. Let's start with your story. I mean, you've had a huge publishing career, and at the same time, you've taken on many new interests, challenges, identities. Give us the overview of your midlife evolution. And
Yeah, no, no,
yeah.
no, thanks. I thanks for asking. I will give you my aha moment of my
Mm,
midlife awakening in a moment. But the thing that sort of sparked my interest in all of this is after an incredible, wonderful career in the magazine world, it was time for me to sort of say, okay, I want to go do my next thing. As many people
mhm,
on the call, I'm sure, have said, all right, it's time to go and do the next thing. And so
mm,
everyone said to me, oh, you're going to retire. And I thought, well, no, I'm just gonna leave this job. I'm
right.
not gonna retire. I'm kind of leave this job because today, if you're 65 and healthy, you may be living another 30 years.
Yeah.
And you have to have a lot of purpose and meaning in your life. The script, we're living 21st century lives in a 20th century script, where we were told, you quote retire from 65, metaphorically speaking, you moved to Florida and play golf, and then it was all kind of like fuzzy. You didn't quite
Yeah.
kind of the slide down. Well, today, it's just the opposite. And so people are, beginning to think about, gee, I have this 20, 30, 35-year run ahead of me. How do I reboot? in our language at Roar, we called it "How do I rewire?"
Hmm.
Become and build on other identities, and build on the what we call at Roar the life layering concept. And as you know, it last year when I was at MEA, we did a lot of work on this life layering idea, which I'll explain and talk about. So for me, it was really this awakening that there's a lot of life to live. What's interesting is, 100 years ago, there were 7 million Americans who were 65 or over.
Hmm.
Today, there's 62 million, growing to
Wow.
80 million in the next decade. So we're all living longer. So you're going to have this redefinition of what's possible at 65,
Hmm.
75, 80 someday. And it's all happening in real time. So yeah, so that all sparked, it all started when that question was asked, am I going to retire?
So yeah, okay. So, and how old were you when you left Hearst?
So I was 66.
So you were 66. And did you, before somebody asked that question, did you have a vision? I mean, and you've
Yeah.
obviously had a lot of side quests and interests and hobbies along the way. How did that all play out? And
Uh,
yeah, tell us about that.
so I was sort of lucky in that I had, when I was 39 years old, I was the publisher of GQ magazine, which of course was a great
Hmm.
job and a great seat to be sitting in. But I realized that all I was, had a great personal life, family life, all of that. But all I was doing was working.
Hmm.
I realized that, I was pretty boring as a human being because all I did was work, right? And typical, building a career, not unusual. And, I'd come back from a trip and a senior executive, I'd come back and I was sort of talking about my great experiences of being the publisher of GQ. And he said, you have to think about one thing. The seat you sit in is a rented seat. And someday that seat is going to go away. And when that
Mm.
goes away, then who are you and what is your identity? And it was like a lightning bolt hit me
Mm.
in my forehead that I needed to really start thinking about this. So I was lucky in that I had this sort of guidance at 39, and I developed this concept called life layering.
Hmm.
In the first half of our lives, we spend a lot of time building a professional or work. We've probably partnered up because we want to have a relationship. We maybe become a parent, maybe not. Maybe you don't have all three of those P's in your life. I call them the three P's. But as we get into midlife, those three P's diminish. You'll always be a parent. You were just telling me your son's off to college, so
Hmm.
go live you're never gonna stop being a parent, but you're
Exactly. Yeah.
not going to be taking up as much of your time. Careers morph and change. You might find yourself unemployed, or you might find yourself pushed out or
Hmm.
whatever. And also, maybe the partner sticks around or maybe the partner doesn't. But we all know that sort of 57-year-old who he or she has, lost their job, the kids are gone, and the parent and the partner said, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So who the big question is, who are you and what do you represent? So for me, the life layering process was when I was around 40, around that time, I said, what is it that really excites me?
Hmm.
What really excited me was this idea of adventure. Pick something that was
Mm.
adventurous. It was sort of core to my being. And we all have this in ourselves. We all have something that, whether it's adventure or creativity or giving back to others, we all have something that's core to us. And I decided that I was going to go hike Kilimanjaro with
Hmm.
friends, take a flying lesson.
Yeah.
Uh, as you pointed out, I became a pilot and hiked many other mountains. But I decided my 40s were going to be my adventure years, and I was going to work that into family commitments and work as much as I possibly could.
Hmm.
And we also developed an adventure travel club that still exists to this day. Once a year, we have a group, we put it out about a year in advance, and we pick an adventure that we want to do somewhere around the world, and we plan for it. And next year, we're planning to hike the Camino, which we're
Hmm.
familiar with.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I've had this rich, rich, rich layer of adventure for 30 years. When I turned 70 last year, I went and did the 9-day hike to the Everest base camp and ran the Everest Marathon down. And I don't recommend that to everybody. That is not for the faint of heart.
No, no, no.
However, if you want to have I think the key is you build a life layer, you build on it, you expand on it, you multiply it, you
Hmm.
commit to it, and it really starts to build a whole different identity. I have this huge community of adventure travelers and adventure runners and marathoners and mountain climbers who I've gotten to know. And so that's a whole community unto itself that is part of that layer for me. So once again, no one has to do what I did. The question is identify for you and take that first step towards building a life layer. And ultimately, you'll have multiple layers, and that means multiple identities, and you'll lean into them, as you live longer and you're into your 50s,
Yeah.
60s, et cetera. So that
So
kind of framework.
for you, were these earlier interests and do earlier interests tell people a lot about what they might want to become, or was this a lot of this was just totally new for you?
Yeah, it's a good question because I get this question a lot when I'm
Yeah.
out in webinars and programs and coming to MEA in October. And
Hmm.
have a whole toolkit of things that we talk about because some people say, well, I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start, or I can't, really think about, what would be a new identity for me.
Hmm.
And, one of so this was always in me. I was one of those 18-year-olds who went to Europe and backpacked.
Yeah.
I came from a poor working class family, and so going to the idea of going to Europe and backpacking for 3 months was like you might as well go to the moon. It was not something that was in our
Yeah.
unit, family. But I had this early adventure thing, and the truth is, I took some of my student loan money and went backpacking in Europe.
There you
So,
go.
I, so I would say to people, go back to your younger self. What was it that was excited you? When I did that backpacking trip to Europe, I was like, wow, this is great. I mean, this let's
Yeah.
now an 18-year-old running around Europe by himself or herself makes me nervous, but it was so I had the adventure sort of thing in me,
Yeah.
and I just re-sparked it. And so going back to your younger self and identifying something that was really excited you in your teenage years, your early 20s, that you put on the shelf,
Mm,
that
hmm.
you sort of parked just because you had to move into practical life. I always use the analogy. Somebody told me they wanted to be an anthropologist, but their parents were like, what are you going to do with an anthropology degree, right? So they got a practical degree, and they were kind of always lamenting that they never followed their path.
Yeah.
You can go do adjunct anthropology stuff, go on volunteer trips, join a
Yeah.
volunteer excavation, go connect with the university. There's always a way to rekindle something from your
Mm.
teenage or early 20 years. And as I said, we have a whole set of tools that we use to help people get on that journey.
So, I mean, you've done this, you've taken people through this process, and I mean, you've been to MEA a few times as well. What are some of the paths that maybe have surprised you that you see people starting to pursue?
So that's true. Somebody just said anthropology is very helpful in international business. It sure is. Understanding other cultures and how they do business, et cetera. I think one of the things that we get excited about, we have a cohort of individuals that we call the reimagineers.
Hmm.
And people can go on our website, roarforward.com, and also sign up for our free newsletter. But you can go on the tab that says reimagineers. And I'm going to answer that question about the tools in a minute. But you can go and see the reimagineers as inspirational stories
Mm-hmm.
collected. And one of the things that we track, we did a big study of 50 to 70-year-olds, and I call these people the age innovators, the ones
Yeah.
who are rewriting the script. And what I was always interested in is not someone who was a banker and became a banking consultant. although that's perfectly fine.
Sure.
I wanted to meet people who were bankers who became a doctor,
Yeah.
something, something that was really, a little bit more out there. Uh,
Hmm.
and so many of our stories are people who, in fact, had a main career, and at a certain point after their main career, they said, I want to continue working
Hmm.
in the same industry, not in the same business for whatever reason. One example is a woman who was a longtime journalist for a daily newspaper, and you know what's happening in the newspaper world. It's very challenging.
Hmm.
And in her 50s, to get ahead of getting laid off, she decided she was going to go back to school, and she got a degree. It wasn't even she had a undergraduate degree, but it was sort of a 2-year degree, certificate type of degree, where she became a drug and rehab counselor. And she's now in her mid 60s and she loves the work. She did it when she started, I think she was 55, 56. She
Hmm.
loves the work. And she's like, I can do this work for the rest of my life or as long as I want.
Yeah.
Um, One other quick story. And by the way, you don't have to go back to school. You can be an entrepreneur. You can
Hmm.
put a hobby on supercharge. There are lots of different ways that you can do it, but the stories that we collect on the website, the Reimagineers, I find them to be really inspirational
Mm.
people because they really stepped out and took a risk and had the courage to say, I'm going to try something, and I'm going to see what. And by the way, it was over 50, and so there you go.
Mm.
Those are some good examples.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go to the website, look at the stories. You'll be inspired.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, in your book Roar, you also outline four parts of a new approach to this stage of life. Can you walk us through those?
Sure. So, and this will answer the question that somebody asked in the chat. So, ROAR is an acronym.
Hmm.
The first R stands for the reimagination process, which I'll get to. The O is own your numbers. The A is
Hmm.
the action plan, and the R is the relationships. So, without giving it all away, because we'd love people to not only read the book but come to our event in October. I think that the reimagination process is such a great daily practice to be thinking about um, what it is and who it is you want to become.
Hmm.
All of the people I interviewed in Roar were who we called the Reimagineers. They didn't they didn't come up with a solution in a weekend. They
Yeah.
didn't come up with the
Yeah.
solution in a week or a month or several months. They came up with their path after a year plus of real introspection and thinking about what was really important to them and what journey they wanted to start taking. It was 50% of it was in their brain,
Hmm.
or they even took the first step to execute on the plan. And by the
Mm.
way, some of them started on the plan and realized it really wasn't what they wanted, and they had to
Hmm.
research and go back and think
Hmm.
about something else. Um, so the reimagination process is this vigorous process of always, whether it's journaling and I'm a big believer in journaling and writing things down and thinking about them, and really spending time with them to say, is this really what I truly want to do or who I really truly want to be, and making a change in my life or taking a new step in a new direction. And the reimagination process also includes things like getting rid of self-imposed ageism,
Hmm.
which is the cloak of our culture.
Hmm.
We spend a lot of time, I'm a publisher, so we spend a lot of time with words. I said rewire instead of retire. We talk about person appropriate versus age appropriate.
Mm.
Let's not talk about a midlife crisis. Let's talk about a midlife opportunity.
Hmm.
Just, those words and spending time on not boxing ourselves in that I can't do this or I can't do that because I'm 45 or 55 or 65. This is also part of the reimagination process. So it gives you a framework and just some tidbits on the first R. The O is, owning. You got to own it. You got to own
Yeah.
your past. You got to own your mistakes. You got to own your good things and your bad things. You got to own your numbers. You got to, health, number one. In my new book, Longevity Nation, that came
Mhm.
out a couple of months ago, there's a lot. I interviewed over 70 people around the world, longevity innovators, and we can come back to the health piece because I think this is a huge
Yeah.
topic in what's happening in the health space. Own your financial numbers. These are all important things that are going to give you a longer lifespan that will be, let's face it, we all want a quality lifespan until the very end. Uh,
Yes.
we want to shorten our comorbidities and, do all the things that and health is number one and financial well-being is number two and purpose and meaning, the things we know. The action plan of A is, of course, life layering is the core concept there. And then the final R, which is the relationships of the people around you who will help facilitate where you want to go and who you want to be and what you want to do. And also, I'm in the publishing business, so editing is a big word, an important word. Edit out those
Hmm.
toxic people.
Hmm.
That college roommate that you've been hanging on to, that you have always said, why am I still friends with that person?
Yeah.
They're the most toxic person. Just because you knew them at 25 doesn't mean you have to know them at 55. And so they're tough decisions, but
Sure.
important ones to make. So anyway, it's an acronym. What I wanted to do with Roar was not make it homework for people, but I wanted to
Hmm.
make it thought-provoking for people, and give them examples and tools and practical things that they could do. So it's been exciting. We're in our fifth printing, so the book
Wow.
has really been a nice gift in terms of the response I've gotten from people.
Fantastic. And yeah, we're gonna talk about the longevity book here in a minute too, because I want to dig into that. But let's talk a little bit more about life layering, which is something you talk about as a practical way to build new interests and identities beyond those established roles. Can you dig into this a little bit more and explain what this is?
For sure. I mean, I think what you want to do, I like to say it's a big, beautiful layer cake,
Hmm.
multiple identities that are not part of your three Ps. And so it's an exploration of what it is that interests you, and it might be things you've learned along the way, or it might be things that have always been in you that you really want to spark. And
Hmm.
if you build what I'll call multiple tracks, not all tracks at the same time, pick a track and build that layer. Then as you get that established, I'll talk about the three Ps in a minute again. Uh,
Hmm.
then you add another layer with something else you want to do. Then you add another layer with something else you want to do. And by the time you're in midlife and you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, you have these multiple identities that you've leaned into that is
Mm.
not about your parenting obligations or even your partner obligations. And at that point, you may be working, you may not be working, or you may be working for money, or you may not be working for money, but you need purpose, but you may not be considering yourself a working person. So
Hmm.
those three things recede, and how do we build? So I'm going to give you my poster child of someone who to me is the exemplary example. He is a man named Alan Patricof. Some of you might know. He was one of the early Wall Street executive.
Hmm.
He launched a business. He launched a business when he was 82, 83. It was actually a fund to invest in companies that were helping people in the second half of life. So it
Right.
might be, they have 25 different investments in all kinds of products and services. At 85, he wrote his first book. At 87, he was the oldest participant in the New York City Marathon.
Hmm.
He walked most of it, but it doesn't matter. He did
It does not
6.2
matter at 85.
miles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at 89, he got remarried.
Wow.
He was a widower. Um, and so to me, he was building all these new layers. He became an entrepreneur. He became a writer. He became a
Hmm.
marathoner. Now,
Yep.
how's he going to build on those? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was the beginning of new pathways,
Yeah.
beginning of new pathways. So if you start a life layer early, the layer gets richer and richer and richer as you live longer. My adventure travel example, it's 30 years of adventure travel and adventure experiences. So you can start this at any age, and you can
Yeah.
25 or 85, so and then once again, somebody asked, where are the tools? Some of the tools are in the book. Some of the tools are in the program and the webinars that we do. And there is a half a dozen tools that we use to help people think it through. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I find it incredible. I mean, when I think back to, my grandparents or great grandparents, that if you made it to your 80s, that was amazing. And you're hearing more and more of these stories. I mean, I was just in Santa Fe at the ranch for the last couple of weeks, and we had, Gail Larson, who is facilitating there. She's 82, and she's still developing new programs and facilitating and carrying entire weeks as a solo facilitator. We've got Jim. Jim might even be on here. Flaherty, who's one of our legendary alums. I think he's in his 90s now, still writing books, which is just for me is inspirational. That's why I say, I don't see myself retiring. I mean, in my mind, retiring is, you know, putting aside playing golf, watching TV. And, I think we're in a different place, particularly in terms of longevity. And in fact, why don't we pivot a little bit, pivot for a second to talk about this book that you just wrote as well. And what inspired you to go from Roar to now focusing on Longevity Nation in this new book?
Yeah, no, thanks. It was an organic evolution.
Yeah,
The concept of living longer is very much in the global zeitgeist, and
yeah,
we live in a world of have and have not. So if you have good health care and you're healthy and have good lifestyle and all of that, and you probably know, I was just in Asia. Was When I was in Asia a couple of months ago, the longest living, Japan, of course, is the oldest country in the world, as you know.
yeah,
Uh, Life expectancies, particularly among Asian women, particularly in countries like Korea and Japan and Hong Kong, are approaching 90. And so this idea that many of us are going to live much longer lives really inspired this idea of, well, what's going on in this longevity world. And I will give credit to the tech bros
yeah,
who put the conversation on the map, although I think that their focus was a little more egocentric than not. But they put the concept on the map. But I wanted to talk to people who were in different worlds, who were really doing the work to create a longevity roadmap. So I think I'm on the Stanford University Center on Longevity
yeah.
board, and Laura Karstensen, our great founder, she wrote the foreword to my book, and she is a great inspiration to me and to many others. But I wanted to speak to people in medicine and technology and urban planning and finance and financial and sort of across the spectrum, because it's a horizontal phenomena. It's not just medicine. It's happening in travel. It's happening in so many places. So I ultimately interviewed 70 individuals who I call longevity innovators,
Hmm.
men and women, and I really wanted to spend a lot of time raising women's voices because the conversation oftentimes was focused on men and focused
Yeah,
on, once again, the tech bros. So
yeah,
some incredible women around the world, like Linda Grattan, who wrote this seminal book, The 100-Year Life, who's become a great friend, and various doctors at the Buck Institute and National University of Singapore and so forth. Um, But so I really wanted to create what I called, remember when you were in college and you took Psychology 101 or whatever it was? I wanted to create Longevity 101.
Yeah.
So I wanted people to say, well, what is this longevity thing I keep hearing about?
Mm,
Read this book. It'll sort of give you a survey course of what's happening in the longevity spectrum, and it
hmm
will give you a perspective on the whole longevity conversation, which is becoming more and more in the zeitgeist, as I said. So, I loved writing the book, and if you want, I can give you a couple of big headlines that I
Well, that was my next question, right? What were the aha moments outside of the tech bros and the super biohackers, which get, the Brian Johnsons don't dies, aside from all of that, what were some of the big ahas or things that surprised you?
I think the biggest aha that I talk about as I'm doing a lot of keynotes around the world on this topic is the convergence of medicine meets technology meets AI.
Hmm
What I mean by that is we're living in a moment of what many people will say is a remarkable medical renaissance in many certain ways. And
hmm
I'll sort of break it down into three categories. The first is the enormous growth and increase in diagnostics and tests
hmm
allow us to become preventative on our health and our individual health journey. Things that didn't even exist, 5, 6 years
Yeah.
ago. And a good example of that, I'm wearing my Aura ring.
hmm
The data is that almost 50% of Americans today have some form of wearable.
Yeah. I got two.
Whoop, Fit, there you go. Whoop, Fitbit,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. Um, and they're indicators, they're not things that are definitive, but they're indicators. We had a story recently, once again, in Esquire, a man wrote how his Oura ring saved his life
hmm
because he kept getting the red danger signals that you get on your Aura app. And
hmm
his wife said, "You better go and get this checked out." And it turned out he had a blockage, and he had to have some heart work done. So they're indicators, they're patterns, they're early detection.
hmm
Also, the tests that are out there now. I mean, if you choose to have the Alzheimer's test, the APOE gene, there are two FDA drugs that are approved for helping to slow down the process. There's no cure, but someday, hopefully, that will come. Obviously, there are lots of other tests that we can use. And by the way, other devices like a glucose monitor and all sorts of things that are now available to us that we are the shift of our medical system from responding and reacting to diagnosis versus getting ahead of it um, is really critical. Yeah, I mean, as Stephen is saying, the human genome,
Yeah.
absolutely. All sorts of there's an amazing amount of research being done. In fact, for those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, we just posted a story today on Dr. Nir Barzilay from Einstein, who has one of the world's largest metformin studies.
hmm
Also has one of the largest centenarian studies in the world, and you can read the interview. And I agree with gut microbiome as well. So the diagnostic piece of it, the tests that are available are really, amazing.
mm
Some of the things that are being researched, number of moonshot projects of
hmm
pills or vaccinations or inject whatever that we will ultimately be able to take that will slow down the cellular aging process.
hmm
And of course, there are other elements that go with this, like exercise and eating right, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But for the moment, sleep as well,
Yeah.
purpose. We're going to talk about longevity protocols in a second, but I'm just talking now just medical for the sake of
Sure.
medical. They're all interrelated. Um, the GLP-1 is the miracle drug
Yeah.
of our lives. It is just flabbergasting if that's a word, how
Good word.
the GLP-1 now. if anybody reads Barron's, there was a great cover story a week or two ago on Barron's and what is happening in the GLP-1 space to be able to not just for diabetes and weight loss, but for cardiovascular improvement and organ function and addiction and so many other the early clinical trials. There's so many things that the GLP-1 is the promise of it is that is being delivered. And I think you're going to see more and more of these kinds of drugs emerge. Some doctors, many of the doctors who I interviewed, thinks that we'll all be on some form of GLP-1 in our lifetimes.
Hmm.
Of all they call it the longevity drug. And, people can, research this and other drugs are like metformin, other classes of drugs that are emerging, like senolytics, which take
Hmm.
up dead senescent cells out of our body and keep our living cells. So we're on the cusp of an enormous amount of progress and new kinds of things that will help us live longer, healthier, better lives.
Mm.
And then what goes along with that on the medical front is precision medicine and the ability that you and I are going to be treated differently for our disease or our diagnosis based on our individual biology.
Hmm.
So all of that, the medical piece has to be integrated into the lifestyle piece.
Yeah.
No matter who I talk to and all the research, number one, number one, number one, number one, did I say number one, is movement and exercise until the day you die.
Yeah.
And, the personal story for me on that is my dad was 92 and a half when he died a year ago. My dad had no disease. He had phenomenal cognitive function. He had no ailments or illnesses, but in the last year of his life, he became very sedentary. And it was the slide down
Yeah.
that ultimately did him in. And I'm convinced he could have lived longer, but he stopped moving and stopped. And so you have to have some form of movement and exercise every single day. And somebody asked me, what's my regimen? I'll answer that in a minute. And then, sorry, somebody just was looking out there. And then, what we eat and how we eat is really important. And I could spend, food and nutrition is a whole other topic.
Yeah.
Sleep, somebody mentioned, of course, purpose and relationships. All these things get intertwined into the medical side of helping us.
Mm.
Anyway, and by the way, the prevailing research is that only 25% of our longevity is genetic.
Yeah.
We have 75% in our control. So, it's pretty awesome when you think about the personal responsibility of building out a healthier, longer life and lifespan that we can all.
Hmm.
So,
And so in your research, one more question in this topic. Obviously the hot topic right now is AI. How is AI impacting this?
so AI is being used for precision medicine,
Yeah.
is being used for drug discovery, is being used in research to supercharge some of the research at the Buck Institute and other universities that are looking for ways to enhance our lifespan in ways that are proven.
Hmm.
Some of them are using the mRNA technology,
Hmm.
but I think it is mostly through the development of precision medicine and ultimately the development of our digital twin. And I don't know if you've heard
Hmm.
of the
Yeah.
digital twin. Um, and, it will be a way where a drug will be tested on our digital twin before it is given to us biologically. And
Hmm.
if there's any kind of reaction based on our individual biology, our history of illness, disease, et cetera, our genetics. Um, so yeah, so AI it's sort of the positive side of the AI story, uh,
Hmm.
if it will, in helping on those fronts.
So during your research and after all of these interviews, I mean, I've heard, I'm a bit of a longevity junkie in many ways. I run the longevity stuff at MEA. I've heard people say, oh, we'll get up to 110, 120. I've heard other people say, we're heading for that longevity escape velocity where, is there really an end? Where did you land?
Yeah. So it's perspective. I remember 100 years ago when life expectancy was 62
Yeah.
in America, and by the way, it was sub 50 in a lot of the world. If you said to people living to 80 will be normalized, they would be like, that is science fiction.
Hmm.
So why shouldn't living to 100 be normalized based on all the things that we are seeing happen in front of us? The oldest person to ever live was 122.
Yeah.
Will we break through that? Probably. There's so many, there's so much to discuss about this. I'll answer this federal policy work in a minute. There's so much to discuss on this front because if people are going to live longer and continue to live longer, what's government policy going to be? What's business policy going to be? Where are the social services and the support
Yeah.
system?
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in Singapore, which to me is, a great set of best practices that the Singaporean government has done in a lot of different ways. So if we push out Dr. David Sinclair from Harvard, you probably
Yep.
know, says the first person to live to be 150 has already been born. Who knows? But
Hmm.
what we do know is more and more people, the UN projection and other projections is that today there are about 770,000 people in the world who are 100 or older. The projection is by 2100, there'll be over 20 million people in the world. So
Wow.
life expectancies are being pushed out further.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots of issues around it, good and bad, good
Yep.
and challenging. But yeah, well, obviously, yeah, we're going to break through that 122-year-old number, but it's going to be some people. It's not going to be this mass.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so let's loop this back. So, I mean, you've taken this interest in longevity. Was this always something that existed, or was this going back to our initial roar conversation, was this something that, your next project, your next thing?
Yeah, it was something, this gets back to a layer,
Hmm.
because that initial idea when I was 65, 66, and someone said, "Oh, you're going to retire," that sent me down sort of an intellectual pursuit of this whole topic.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and what happened is I ended up becoming a student of the topic. Obviously, I wrote the book now too. I launched a business. So we're a B2B business. We work with over 50 companies. I have a team of 10 people. So I became an entrepreneur. That was not on my agenda at all.
Yeah.
But you follow the thread in terms of the things that excite you and
Hmm.
you become interested in. What I realized is that, at 71, I'm healthy. I'm, energetic. I'm ambitious. I want to learn new things. I want to be a lifelong student. I want to continue to push myself and my family to be risk takers and to think about new, not bring life in smaller, but make life bigger. And so I kind of became the accidental role model of my own self in
Hmm.
terms of thinking about this idea that if I can still do a lot of different things. So my current passion, aside from my other layers, is my advocacy for mostly for the next generations. Some of us
Mm-hmm.
generation may live longer and healthier, but if you're 40 today, or if you're 45 today, or you're 35 today, and if you have the possibility to live a longer life with many, many dimensions to it, start thinking about that now,
Yeah.
because it can deliver. It's all compounded, right? And
Yeah.
it's all about a compounding effect.
Yeah.
So I think my generation are the role models. Some of us are turning out to be the role models for our families, our kids, our communities,
Hmm.
society at large. And you touched on it earlier. if you look at, forget what they look like, if you really think about what 65 and 70 and 75 and 80-year-olds are doing today that a previous generation would have
Yeah.
thought impossible, they're the role models. And I know the
Yes.
Arizona State University program and Mirabella, I write about Mirabella in the book, if that's what you're referencing in Longevity Nation. I interviewed Lindsay Beagley, she's amazing. Um, but I think, the role models, one of the kids in our family was telling the story about my Everest trip and that he dropped my age and people were like, "What?" When I was 35 or 40, I never knew a 70-year-old who was doing something other than what was the
Yeah.
20th century script. So I've become a real passionate person and advocate for this topic.
Yeah, I love that. So that said, I'm going to open it up to questions in a second, and there's been a lot of questions piling up here in the chat as well. But before we do, let's actually talk about the workshop that you have coming up at MEA, and who's it for? What are you trying to accomplish in that week together?
Well, I did the workshop last year, as you
Yep.
know. We had a great group, an incredible group. I think, first of all, yeah, I have an incredible bias for the gorgeousness of Santa Fe in New Mexico.
Yep.
Uh, for full disclosure, we have a family home there. I always say to people, my soul lives there. So if
Hmm.
anybody has an opportunity to go to New Mexico, the land of enchantment, sign me up. Um, what we were really, most of the people who were there, which I think is really what we want, are people who are what we'll call at midlife. And
Hmm.
midlife, as you know, Derek, has many different definitions.
Yeah,
And
it's
so,
broad.
I think our group was 45 to
Yep.
70-ish. We may have had a couple of people over 70. But I think it's the people who want to grow, who want to learn, who are not restricting themselves that, oh, I'm 60, I can't do that, or no, I can't. There are people who are open to the possibilities of what might be able to be in their lives. And a lot of it, by the way, I think we had 14-ish people in the group.
Hmm.
um, there was a lot of great community and a lot of sharing. And, it's also, you have to be vulnerable as much as you will allow yourself. But I think that you find yourself, um, what is said in MEA stays at MEA. Is that the expression?
Yeah.
What happens at MEA stays at MEA. So I think what I was really impressed with is how it was a mixed group of men and women. I was really
Hmm.
impressed with how the men let their sort of defenses down.
Yeah.
Men tend to be, not to pick on my gender, but they tend to be a little more defensive about the
Sure.
real stuff. Um, and I think everybody walked away with some action plans for the.
Hmm.
And we walk them not just through the ROAR methodology, but also MEA's thinking and methodology with the facilitator that's assigned to it. So I'm always excited to be there again, and so looking forward to that.
Excellent. Good. So what I'd love to do now is just let's open it up to some questions. And for anybody that has a question for Michael, just throw your the little raise hand button there, and when it pops up, I'll call on you. You can unmute yourself and fire any questions you have, Michael. Here, go for it. And then I think we have some more probably in the chat here that we haven't answered. And so one from Stephen Gordon here, will health span increase along with lifespan?
In a perfect world, it should, because
Yeah.
you want health span to facilitate lifespan. I like to say that aging is the process, longevity is the goal. And it
Hmm.
really means health span for a better lifespan. Because none of us want to spend 3, 4, or 5 years in a state of whether it's physical or mental mobility issues. I mean, I always like to say we're all going to die someday. But we want that back end to be as short as possible to be
Yes.
able to have. I remember asking my mother was 84, 85 at the time, and I said, "Mom, what's your view of this?" And she said, "My goal is to have a peaceful death." I said, "I think when you're 85, you think about."
Hmm.
And My mother died in her sleep at 89, which was amazing. Well, she had some health issues, but
Yeah,
she had health issues, but she didn't suffer or have this long drawn out. And I think health span is there's no lifespan unless you have health span.
100%. And I can't remember who said it. I heard it recently. And so for those that are asking about, your your exercise plan, which I think somebody I did ask about, so we'll talk about that. But I want to get your take on this. Um, it was a doctor that said cardio exercise gives you lifespan, lifting gives you health span.
I like that. I like that. I do something 6 days a week.
Yep.
Um, I'm a runner, as you know, and
Yep.
we're running a super half marathon in Copenhagen in September. So I'm in the process of training for that. But I generally run, it's just my thing. I generally run 4 days, minimally 4 days a week.
Hmm.
I do weight training. This morning I did weight training, so I try to do that a couple times a week. I integrate cycling into it, either stationary or regular bike. I'm really bad at stretching. I need to stretch more. I just don't have the patience for
Yeah, I
stretching.
was about to say stretching's boring, but yeah, I get you.
So and it's important. I do the thing where I stand on one foot and see how long I can stand on one foot, and
Yep.
I'm talking on the cell phone or whatever. But stretching, weight, cardio, fundamental stuff. I count my steps. Part of it, the running piece gives me. The other day I had 26,000 steps because I did a long training run, so I was feeling really, happy.
Hmm.
But I think the key is do whatever works for you.
Yes.
You know, and the thinking is 150 minutes a week is
Hmm.
what you need, and rotate on those things. You don't have to be pushing it beyond that unless you want to. I enjoy the physical activity aspect of I'm a skier. I've always been a racket sports, so it's always been a part of my life. But you can start
Hmm.
at any time. There's a great woman I interviewed. Some of you may know her for my book. Her name is Joan McDonald. Joan didn't start working out until she was in her 70s.
Hmm.
I think Joan is 82 today. She she is a great inspiration. You can follow on Instagram. It's Train with Joan. She didn't start, doing a physical fitness program until she was in her early 70s. So you can start at any
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Any, yeah.
Yeah, it's never too late. I've been reading some studies recently on weightlifting in 80-year-olds
Yeah.
and the incredible transformation, bone density, muscle mass, body composition, which has all sorts of other good things as well. So it's never too late. Which is huge. Sheena just asked, "Are we on the brink of ending aging?" New National Geographic article landed in my inbox.
Yeah. I wish I could say yes, but I don't think. Um, the reason I love the word longevity versus the word aging, and they're interchangeable, is that aging comes with all kinds of baggage attached to it, where
Hmm.
longevity is the promise of healthier aging, and I think that's the key. Healthier aging is what we all want. Um, and so I think we will all age, of course, but we want healthier aging. And so that there was a lot of debate and discussion, and in the book Longevity Nation, um, I take this on as a topic and talk to a lot of people about replacing the word aging with longevity, and or they're interdependent or they're interrelated as well. So yeah, I think we'll see more of that happening.
Yeah. And Don, the quote about cardio versus lifting is cardio gives you lifespan, lifting gives you health span, right? So having that strength to be able to carry things, do things, right? That requires some resistance training. Um, good. Well, on that note, Michael, thank you.
Yeah, it was
I,
great.
I appreciate this, and the workshop's coming up October 18th to 22nd, and Who's, I mean, if you had to summarize, who is this for?
Well, first of all, I think it's for people who are curious,
Hmm.
are interested, who want to expand their lives and expand who they are and who they can become and the possibilities of who they can become in the second half of their life. I think that is really who it's for. The reimagineers, as we research them, they're optimistic, they're upbeat
Yeah.
about their future. Some of you know the work of Dr. Becca Levy, who I've,
Yep.
I've interviewed. If you have a positive attitude about aging, it can add 7.5 years to your life. So I think these are people who are pro-age, positive about aging, the possibilities with aging, as opposed to, oh, getting older and oh my God, and woe is me and all that kind of. So the people who get the most out of it are the people who say, let me open up and let me be, pro-aging, let me be thinking about what could be next for me. That's if people can walk away from it with some tools and ideas, then, and I still hear from people who were at the event last year, and a couple of them have joined our Roar Mastermind group where we have
Mm,
events, we have webinars and so forth. So I still hear from people, which is great. So yeah, that's who it's for.
fantastic. All right, Michael, thank you very much. And we will see you in Santa Fe in October. And everybody who joined us, thank you so much, everyone. Have a fantastic